I need that. Right.
Right.
Right. What's the usual thing for starting? Who wants to go first?
And welcome to the Mediocre Photography Show. My name's Ben.
My name's Jack.
And I'm Louis.
And,
Surprise!
special guest on today.
Ta-da.
Welcome, Louis Barr.
Louis Gar.
Bowie La.
Bowie La. Goodness gracious.
What are you doing here, Louis? What's going on?
Well, I'm going to be an occasional co-star with these lovely fellows.
Wouldn't say star, would you?
Oh, yes, I would. I'm sparkly as they come. Every time I smile, there's a little glint like in a toothpaste advert. Marvellous.
I'm not editing that in.
Yeah, I don't care. I still say it. I basically do architecture photography as my speciality. And we all did the same degree together, so we've known each other for ages and ages and ages and ages. Which, so that's me. I've been brought in for opinions and judgments and discussions and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun day today. We've got quite a lot planned. It's more of a, I think, light-hearted, chilled out episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna scroll through the absolute minefield that is the photograph subreddit, and we're gonna be judging and being critical, and it's just gonna be an absolute nightmare, isn't it? It's gonna be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, can I just mention before we start is that in the last episode you mentioned an architectural photographer, didn't you, Ben? A friend that does architectural photography.
I don't know
and
what
that
you're
was
on
Louis.
about, Jack. Don't know what you're on about.
That was Louis. Louis is known as the building master.
The masonry
Master
guy.
of architectural photography.
Do you watch our podcast, Louis?
Yes, of course I do.
That's bullshit.
How dare you? I heard when you said you hated architecture photography, and I was a little bit stung by that. But then I thought, well, a tree's a tree, so...
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh.
No. We've had this conversation
Ooh,
many
we
a time
started the
before.
We have.
war.
Yeah, we've had this particular argument. So, and we're not going to have it again. How have you been, Jack?
Oh well, hello Ben. It's nice to see you again
After a week?
after a week. Yeah, no, it's been all right. I have just come off a week of night shifts, so I am confused and I don't know what's going on. But I'm
More so than normal.
more so than normal, yeah. But no, I'm all right. How are you?
All right, yeah. Not been too
Yeah.
bad. Just, ticking along, doing my thing. Done some photography. I've was featured in a zine.
Oh, you're featured in a zine.
In a zine.
Oh, I'll get you.
Called the Isolation Zine,
Oh, of course.
which I'll link to below.
That sounds
Um,
happy.
The reason why I was featured in this zine was actually, interestingly, because I accidentally clicked something on someone's story. Oh, do you want to be part of this zine? And I accidentally, how sometimes you just accidentally,
Yeah.
click something. And, it turns out that I am too British to have turned around and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but
I
I
accidentally.
accidentally clicked this. So I don't actually want to be a part of it." So then I went out and produced work for it.
Oh, nice.
So it's some infrared photography.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, I have been featured in a zine. In a zine.
In a zine eye.
Design.
These are photos taken on infrared film, which was a interesting challenge to work with. Actually, turns out that you need to, with the IR filter on the front and also reciprocity failure, you're looking at about 10 to 15 stops that you need to overexpose by.
Yeesh.
So yeah, they were long exposures, but it's interesting that plants reflect infrared light, and certain plants reflect them a lot more than others, as you can see with the kind of the, I don't really know what bush it is, but the bush one is a lot brighter compared to the background. But then you've got it's actually a cherry tree in the background of that photo, which is quite brightly exposed as well. And then I photographed some like our log store as well, and that's quite interesting because it's very, very, very contrasty. It's very, very dark in the places that the photos don't hit, and then very, very light in the places that the photos do hit. So yeah, it was an interesting challenge.
Nice.
I quite liked IR film. I'm going to hopefully work with it again. But yeah, just thought I'd share that, show
That's
that I'm
very
actually
nice.
doing some.
That's very, very lovely. I absolutely adore infrared film. I really, really love the aesthetic. I've never shot it, but I really love its use.
It's an absolute ball ache, if I'm brutally honest. Yeah, the first ones that I did were not very good, and I actually ended up shooting this as collodion. So I would develop one photo, or shoot one photo, develop it, see how it came out, and then from there shoot another one and develop it, because I was so unsure about which way I needed to go. I wasn't even sure which way to bracket, if that made sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up just doing it one at a time. Ended up shooting 5 photos. Took me about 5 hours.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
So yeah,
Goodness.
there we go.
But-
And that was just in your garden.
And that was just in the garden. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's my my little zine, and I'll link for that below. It's called the Isolation Zine. The first episode was called "You Are Alone."
Could be titled
which is-
anything better.
Yeah, exactly. But there are some really good photographers there as well, so definitely go and check those guys out. And I don't know, there might be another edition. I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, have anyone else been up to any photography recently?
I have been using photography to cheer people up during this isolation.
Tasteful nudes.
And yep, you know me. No, whenever I've been doing my daily exercise, I'm quite lucky. I live like near quite a big patch of land that's not been built on in the middle of my city. Lovely trees and flowers and fields and things, and I'll just be walking along, and one of the first things that I wanted to learn to photograph were flowers. They're beautiful, incredible things, and I thought, let's do some of that. So I have been taking photos and doing a little bit of slow-mo video just on my phone, putting some music and posting them to my colleagues at work. And it's just a little thing to cheer people up, and it's just a little, when you're watching that video with that beautiful flower, with that music, it's just a little space, like delivering a little garden to someone, and that's your minute for the day where you can just chill, not think, and just concentrate on the beautiful picture. So that's what I've been doing recently, and I've enjoyed it, and I've watched my videos several times.
It's so weird.
When I take a picture I stare at it for ages.
It's so weird that those two things that you guys have just mentioned are complete opposites.
Yeah.
One is completely like.
I should send a picture.
Yeah, do.
To,
But like yours is about isolation, and yours is about making people happy during isolation.
So without any more further ado, what do you say we do the photo conversations?
super duper.
Louis, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so the word was redundant/redundancy, and I generally think about when one is responding to something like this, it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm going to visually respond," and that's it. But there's kind of a couple of paths as to how one can do that. So I thought, should I photograph something that is redundant and illustrate the word, or should I try and capture a feeling? It doesn't have to be something photographing something that is itself redundant to capture a feeling. You know, it can be a bit more than that. So this is what I have photographed. It's a bit unusual compared to what I normally do.
Let's have a look. Okay. Okay. So what we've got here for
would you like me
those
to
who
explain,
aren't.
or would you like to?
Well, let's describe it first of all for those who aren't watching and are only listening. So we've got a very flowery dress on a mannequin on quite a neutral grey background. There's not really much of a gradient. It's quite a dark grey. Right on the very right-hand side of the photograph, there's a strip of white, and the mannequin's also got a rather fetching flowery hat of what looks like a similar pattern. And despite the fluorescence, it's all in black and white.
It is very different.
It's very Louis.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Anyway, should we let him
That
explain it?
Explain it, and we'll let's think about it and see what's going on.
So, this kind of treads in between the two approaches that I outlined. It does kind of have a little bit of I don't know, a boringness, a plainness about it, emotionally speaking, but it's also quite illustrative. And the idea of this was, under the crappy COVID, is what I'm calling it, lockdown, I am a forlorn worker, and I feel a little bit like a mannequin just stood in a shop, completely useless, just stood watching things, and there's nothing that I can do. Sort of trapped at home and just observing and looking. And it can be summed up by the phrase sort of standing there like a lemon. You know, I'm just sort of a dumb object stood there watching. That's how I feel as a flawed worker at the moment. And I'm a flawed worker with at-risk family members in my household, so I have to be very, very careful in going out and doing anything in order to avoid it, you know, transferring it to them. So it's pretty much me looking at everything, because that's the only thing I can do at the moment, because I don't take any risks. And I thought that might do the trick. You know,
Fair enough.
I think a lot of people feel like they're mannequins at the moment. I mean, Jack doesn't. He's working, but everyone else has just stood there going, "Oh, bugger."
Looking out the window.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Jack?
That makes a lot more sense now. I didn't think it would be something like that, but that makes complete sense. It actually makes a lot more sense.
What did you think it would be? I'm interested to hear.
I don't know, because obviously we mentioned that we would do it like this was sort of the main reason for this, was to try and step outside our boxes in a way, and so I didn't really know what to expect, but I was expecting something quite simple, or like simplistic. Yeah, that's the word. And but I wasn't expecting that. I could say that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very good visual style. I think as a photograph, it works very well, despite its sort of simplicity. It has a something that makes you linger on it quite a while. it's an interesting concept behind the photograph as well. One thing that I am curious about is would you just as this mannequin is representing you, would you describe yourself as a floral person, or was that purely coincidental?
No, that was coincidental. That's actually my mother's sewing mannequin, and it's in my kitchen. And it was just stood there, and I thought, I feel a bit like that mannequin at the moment, so I took a picture of it.
Henderson,
Me?
go on.
Right, so I obviously, as Louis mentioned, I am still working. I am known as a critical for some strange reason, but I sort of thought back to the last time I felt properly redundant. The when I felt like I couldn't do anything to make the situation better. As people know, I am a bit of a joker, and so I always like to see the two smiles. See, he's got it. But the last time I really felt that I couldn't do anything to change the situation was at my granddad's funeral last year, and I sort of wanted to recapture a something that happened there. I'll send you the photo now. Maybe I should actually do that first. And so I wanted to sort of recapture something that happened that it sort of felt like a still in a film, and I just remembered it as I was thinking about like the feeling of redundancy and not being able to do anything, and as you know, you said, Louis, like just being a mannequin in like a shop window, and so I did that. I stuck with the black and white because for some reason I'm really liking it. I don't know.
Yeah, you've been converted.
I've been converted.
Good.
It's yeah, but I sort of wanted to leave have the picture sort of simple and like sort of remain a mystery. So yeah, it's still quite simple, but it's still there's sort of like a link to my other my last photo conversation. So I sort of wanted to keep it sort of similar, but
Yeah, and that's the thing that immediately jumps out to me is that the visual language is very, very, very similar to the last one that you did. Sort of is it at 1-1?
yeah.
Facebook has a tendency of doing horrible cropping to these things. But yeah, so it's the same aspect ratio. It's the same tonality of black and white. I'll just describe the photo again for people that may not be watching. So it's Jack bowed down, head away from the camera, almost in prayer, with a black suit hanged up on or hung up on a wardrobe above him, which obviously is reminiscent to what one might wear to a funeral.
I didn't notice the prayer thing. That's quite a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Cindy Sherman.
Yeah, that's
You know,
what immediately came to me as well.
It's very, I mean, the prayer thing is also it is one aspect to it, one kind of angle, but another thing is that with the tuxedo jacket being higher than you, it almost becomes representative of like a father figure, like somebody you look up to, and that's kind of as a perspective from a child. You're just physically you're always looking up at your parents, but you are emotionally as well. And what is interesting about that is I think this almost conveys a childlike vulnerability because of that. It's almost like the tuxedo is representing the sort of the sad event, whatever it may be, and its positioning is putting that vulnerability onto you, and therefore communicating that to the audience. and that's one of the reasons why I think visually this is very, very interesting, because it's just a tuxedo, it's just a wardrobe, it's just its component parts, but when put together and photographed in a certain way, it becomes greater than the sum of its parts. So I think that's a very, very interesting response.
Do you think that you're going to continue with this kind of visual style? Because I can immediately
man.
see kind of like a zine or like a sort of small exhibition coming out of this, as visually they are so similar in this again visually, but also with what you're looking at, sort of introspective work as well. Is that something you're going to continue with, or do you reckon that's going to be kind of word dependent?
Annoyingly, I'm, as you sort of said, I'm being converted. I think I'm really liking this sort of simple, like sort of soft black and white. And annoyingly, I'm liking me being in the photos, which is weird for me because
You vain bastard.
I am not vain. I don't know what has come over me in lockdown, because I think as soon as because I've had this idea for a while to do self-portraits, but I've never had to like force myself to do something different to what I'm usually. So I think the fact that I've had to force myself to do something different in this, change of scenario and situation is sort of maybe a good thing for me.
I think
So
so.
I might carry it on, or I might not.
It's interesting because a lot of your past projects, they have, I don't know how to phrase it nicely, and this is meant to be a
Do it. I
compliment.
can take it.
It's
Don't.
not meant to be...
Ben called me a one-trick pony a couple of episodes ago.
I heard.
It's fine. I can take anything.
I think your photographic projects, even though they're looking at your origins and people that surround you, are actually quite selfish projects. You're doing them because you want to, and it's the type of work you enjoy producing, but also it's this kind of, there is an element of self-reflection there, and that's coming across, and I think it's therefore a natural progression for you to go on to doing, to try self-portraits. Now, I don't think being selfish in photography is a bad thing whatsoever. I think if you're not a selfish photographer, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You've got to enjoy the work and really get to grips with it and grapple with these ideas. So I think it's quite a natural progression that's always been in your work, even though your previous work has focused on a different angle, so to speak. What, do you agree with that, or do you say no, definitely not?
I think you're right with the natural progression thing. I think by the end of most of my projects, there's sort of, I've either sort of made it about me. It's instead of looking at, a subject or a figure and sort of detaching myself from that subject or figure, it ends up being my response to the story and my feelings towards that figure or subject or whatever. So I think, yeah, you might be right with the self-portraits. So
Yeah.
I think what's always fascinated me about your projects is there's a certain level of depth that you get that most other projects don't. So somebody will think, I've got this idea, go out and photograph it. Whereas that's kind of stage one, like observational. It's kind of like what I was describing before of redundancy. I'll photograph something that's redundant to express what redundancy is. That's a one-stage project. Whereas yours tend to be 2, 3, 4-stage projects where you end up going from, sort of a representative base, what's the word, sort of a superficial image to something that is more depth. So instead of doing a self-portrait project describing loneliness and I'm going to sit in the bath and cry, you tell stories that make people think about the photographer themselves. And there's a certain level of depth to that kind of a more observational project wouldn't have.
I don't know what to say.
Anyway.
Thank you very much.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I think I would say this very quickly, and we'll move on. Just time is a factor. I think that definitely the strongest projects you've had have always been the ones where you have been more introspective. And when I look back, the weaker work that you've always done has always been the work that's been more not about you, perhaps, which is very interesting because that is a complete contrast of what you said in the last episode, where you said, we should never produce emotional work, we should sort ourselves out and then it almost sounded like you were coming across as we should be emotionally negligent when we're producing photography and not let our emotions drive our work. So basically what I'm saying is I told you so.
Massive hypocrite.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right,
Ben.
So, last but not least, last but definitely least. Let me send that, and then I have pulled up a text file, which I will read out. So, thoughts behind this work is another interesting project idea, in my opinion. Just so happens that I've been reading a lot about Marxism and his opinion on materialism recently. Stick with me, this isn't a tangent, I promise. So basically, Karl Marx turned around and said that each economic system or mode of production eventually led to a contradiction, which ended up in that economic conditions' demise. He went on to criticise capitalism, saying that the constant desire for faster and better ideas would lead to redundancy within material items. And as capitalism progresses, so does the redundancy of those material items they choose to produce. He goes on to theorise that overproduction would eventually lead to the demise of capitalism and the rise of communism. So this got me thinking about different ways that we can consume as people living in a capitalist state. And advertising immediately sprang to mind. And I had a few different ideas for what I could say with that. But when I was doing some research, I actually came across a collective which was called Brandalism, who are a group of artists that basically they go around and purchase advertising spots, so like on the sides of bus stops and this and that and the other, and then they use these as makeshift galleries. And of course they talk about sort of capitalism and advertising and this and that and the other as well in that. So I had a few different ideas that I worked with here, and the first was to go on to a load of websites and take screenshots of their landing pages and then stick these all together in Photoshop in a kind of aesthetic way. And I did actually do this and create that work, but the problem is that I'm not actually a very aesthetic person and the results just didn't look very good. And then the second idea that I had was to like make something useless and then photograph it as an advert. So like a chocolate teapot, and then there'd be boiling water being poured into it and the teapot would melt. But this came unstuck when I couldn't think of something utterly useless and I didn't have a huge amount of time to produce the work and couldn't really get supplies in. So anyway, and then I went back to long exposure again, and this is actually my mum sat in front of the shopping channel for 4 minutes, and the result shows a room which is completely full of redundant products and people trying to convince you to buy them. And I think it shows that Marx's idea of, constantly being given useless items isn't too far from the truth. So it's kind of, again, it was a bit of a tangent. I'm not overly happy with the end result, if I'm brutally honest. I think that I could have worked with it a little bit more. I kind of feel like I should have shot this on large format, but again, I just didn't have the time. But I thought that the sort of message behind it was quite interesting.
I very much like the story behind it. And I'm getting kind of Gregory Crewdson vibes.
Yeah, I immediately got that as well.
And also Brendan Barry vibes as well.
Yeah, Brendan was actually quite a key inspiration for this, if I say so.
I thought he might have been. It does have... There is a real mood about it. There's a real kind of pessimistic mood. Lighting, composition, just the general colour cast, the sort of the cold blue juxtaposed with the idea of a living room being cosy and warm and somewhere safe. And it's almost like, even at home, we're not, for want of... I mean, this will sound really socialist, we're not safe from the sort of the ravages of capitalism. We're not an island, we're not protected against anything, we're pawns in a great game of chess that capitalism is, and we're doing what we're told and all of that. And that sort of attitude, your visual language kind of really shows that, and it makes me think of how I view capitalism as my own political ideology. I'm not keen on it, let's keep it at that. And there's a sort of oppressive nature about it, I think.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. It was deliberately meant to be something that was very negative. As far as the key word is concerned, I don't know how well it links to it. I was stretching a little bit, and I was aware that I was stretching, but I didn't. I wanted to, again, for me, this whole kind of little thing that we're doing is to challenge myself, and I didn't want to be too introspective. I wanted to challenge myself to sort of think out of the box a little bit. So, yeah, I at a stretch, I think I could probably, it is there, but I think I could probably work with the narrative behind it a little bit more and make that a little bit stronger.
I think what would improve that is an abundance. The floor is empty. There's not much on the fireplace over there. There's some little products in the centre of the image, but if you just got loads of stuff, different products, then it would be a very obvious way of saying, why am I watching the shopping channel? I've got all of this stuff. Capitalism makes me want it.
Yeah.
It would be definitely an obvious way to do that, but it would have a bit of punch. It's almost like when you're going to go for that approach, you've got to really, really, really overdo it.
Yeah.
In order for it to become almost overwhelming as a sensory experience to the audience.
Yeah.
And then that captures the kind of zeitgeist of Marx's opinions on capitalism.
Yeah. I think I was kind of hoping that the TV would have almost like a burn-in of the channel as well. So, it's got like the bit down the bottom where it
cool now
gives you the cool now.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that the TV looked a little bit more like that, but it just washed out. So again, I think I could probably work with the exposure a little bit and could have done a little bit more with that as well. But, for a 4-minute experiment, it was fine. And my mum was about to go to bed, so...
Yeah, hurry up, Ben, I'm tired. It's also a bit like Hiroshi Sugimoto's cinema project as well, isn't it?
Yeah, again, that immediately sprung to mind.
From the screen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting, that as well. What do you think, Jack?
Jack, what do you think?
I think you're not really stretching with the redundancy thing. I think, like Louis said, there could have been a couple more things. I don't think, you had to go too over the top with...
But this is the thing, that we don't actually own utter crap. So, we are quite a functional family in that sense. Like, we don't have 4 blenders and, like, a magic...
Right.
That's me.
What is it? Flex tape.
Flex tape. No, yeah, I think, yeah, maybe it could have done with more crap if you had it. But I don't think it needed to be, like, all over the floor. I think you could do it quite subtly. But it is, as a photo, it's quite, as you say, sort of Gregory Crewdson, Brendan Barry sort of deal. But I also like the little light from the laptop.
Yeah.
I think that's
yeah,
it's just those subtle little hints of light. Like,
well, do you know the reason for that, actually?
Oh no,
we can't get the shopping channel.
No.
Like, we don't have the shopping channel, and so I had to like get a 10-hour stream of YouTube and then plug my laptop into the
Brilliant.
TV.
In that case,
And then your mum's just watching really, really
Old.
old products
Yeah,
from like
exactly.
the early 2000s going, oh, I want one of those.
Cool. So that's redundancy. Jack,
new word.
new word.
Right. Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready. Drum roll, please.
You can edit that in, yeah?
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
Are you going through and picking the ones?
no,
you like?
I am genuinely... No, the first two, randomised, first time, brilliant words. For what we're going through at the minute,
yep.
it's brilliant.
Constant redundancy.
yeah.
They're good words.
The third word is gutter.
Oh my god. Oh my god, it knows. Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Oh,
No. We can
gutter.
work with gutter.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
What's it gonna be next week?
I actually do need to clean the gutters. That's one of my chores this
Jesus.
week.
Perfect. There you go. Well, the next word is gutter. Oh dear.
Bloody hell.
Oh dear.
That's
Brilliant.
concerning.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So,
Cool. Gutter it
Oh.
is. Yeah. I can do some stuff with that. Don't know. Might just photograph my love life.
Hey.
oh.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Kill me. Moving on to the main bit of the podcast. We are going to be scrolling through the absolute minefield that is r/photography. Here we
Right,
go.
should we
Right,
should we
29 minutes ago.
Yeah, should we say before we start is that we're not professional photographers. This is genuinely a joke. And however unlikely it is that we, ever someone that posted on this ever comes across this show is very unlikely, but we don't mean anything by it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it would be worth pointing out, given that, I mean, although we're not professionals, but we have all done a degree in it, and we've all done a degree in critiquing things, I don't know if this will sound mean in itself, but to the people that are making this kind of work, it's okay to make these mistakes, and it's okay to take bad pictures because you learn from them and it improves. It's okay to do a cliched project so long as you're enjoying it and so long as you learn from it. So it's not meant to be mean-spirited, it's just meant to be a reflection on where we are in terms of our own practice and how that fits in with where we were, because we've taken pictures
Oh, yeah,
lot
you'll
worse
see that.
than these
Yeah.
in the past. So yeah, you will see those later. So yeah, this is not we're high and mighty on our throne
This is-
because we've done all of this stuff. It's literally we were once like this.
Most
so we
definitely.
understand.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to destroy.
Well said.
All right, first one. This is by the user Vert. And actually, I don't mind that.
Do you know what? I don't mind it either. This is a great start.
I
I do.
think. I mean, again, knowing where it's coming from, have you noticed there's a bit of a weird shadow going on here?
Oh no.
So that could be something that's been edited out.
Yeah, because it looks like that tree in front of that shadow
Yeah.
is not right.
It's quite weird actually that there's quite a strong shadow on the house and on the roof of the truck, but on the foreground it seems quite
Yeah.
a flat
Yeah.
light.
So perhaps there's been
so it
some
might be a bit of composite
editing that's
there.
going
Touching
on
up.
there.
I now cannot get that tree out of that looks. I can't stop seeing that
and
tree.
it's been ruined.
Oh,
No, I mean
look,
overall,
look.
it's not a bad.
No,
It's not a bad shot.
I quite like it. Yeah.
The composition's quite nice. It's a very peaceful photo. I think that the subject matter's a little bit cliched. Obviously, it's an abandoned house with an abandoned car, but it's not going out of its way to be anything that it's not. Like, I know people that would photograph this like a haunted house and make it look really dark and foreboding and horrible. You've got quite a nice... I was actually about to point at my screen, but realised but you've got quite a nice natural arc that goes here, which frames it quite well. I would probably be inclined to crop it slightly. I'd probably crop like just this little bit out here. But yeah, Louis, you don't like it.
I don't like it for a couple of reasons, and one of the reasons is something I'm fascinated by, which is how the accompaniment of text can affect an image. Now, the fact that this image is called Parked for Good, that tells me exactly the narrative that they want to display with this image, and therefore makes it really cliched. You can see the guy drives the truck, he gets out, he goes into his house, something happens, maybe the person dies or they move, whatever, and then that's it. That's the last time. It's a finality. It's a terminal narrative, as it were, and that's what I don't like about it, because it lacks depth. It lacks meaningful interpretation. It's a cliched shot. Photographically, it's very good. I like the composition. As Ben pointed out, that natural arc works very well in framing the house, but it is almost like trying to evoke a sense of melancholy and loss in the audience without any reason for it, and that's why I'm not keen. So sorry, whatever your name is on Reddit. I think your choice of title is a bit not
All
good.
right.
I'm trying not to be nasty. I'm trying to be pleasant.
What does Instagram? What does Reddit think? He's been to the same location. This is the original poster. Wanted a low perspective. Okay, yeah, that's not particularly interesting. Right, moving on to.
There's just one comment on that. There'll be one comment on each of these.
A bee.
Is that a bee?
It's a bee.
Yeah, that's a bee. They like to sleep in flowers. Because when they're sorting the pollen out, they often get tired. So if they sleep in a flower, it kind of protects them and hides them. Then once they've had a nap, like we would on the hard shoulder, or
no, you absolutely don't sleep on the hard shoulder, Louis.
Yeah, that was a wrong word. Like
a lay-by
station or a lay-by.
Please never ever pull over on the hard shoulder.
No. Wrong word. But that's essentially what the bee is possibly doing. It might just be, looking for pollen. It might not be asleep, but who cares if the bee's asleep or not? That's not the point.
All right. I don't mind this one either, actually. Again, it's just a very aesthetic photo. It looks like if I was into bees, I would have this as my desktop screensaver.
Yeah, if you're like a beekeeper or something.
If I was a beekeeper, I would have this as my desktop screensaver. It just appeals to me. It's all the same color. I think it's been a little bit overly processed.
Yeah.
Sort of if you look into.
Oh man, that's weird.
With the color of the flowers. Ugh. I like the pollen on the side here as well, on his legs. I think that's quite nice. I quite like sort of the spiral that you have with the petals. Yeah, it's a nice aesthetic photo. Going back to Louis saying sweet bee foraging in a sour glass flower, number 3. It does what it says on the tin.
And that's all it needs to do. There's no pretense with this. It's literally an interesting subject presented in a nice, pleasing
Do you know how I'd make it better?
And that's... Go on then, how would you make it better?
I was gonna say.
Now I'm the black and white guy, and I don't agree with that. I think for some subjects it works, and others it just simply doesn't. The merit of this photo is in its yellowness. It's really punchy and really like boom. It would work great on like a canvas or something, you know, but big on the wall. It would be very, very pleasant. And if you turned it black and white, I'd walk past it.
All right. What do you think, Jack?
I think I'm not much of a nature person, but I think if that the second bee, the one with its butt rather than the head, was not there, that I'd like that a bit more.
What?
Oh, I didn't. Is it 2 Bs?
I don't.
Yeah, it must be 2 Bs.
Yeah, because a bee can't be that long.
Oh, I thought.
But is that not 2 Bs?
No, I think it is, because if you look at the wings,
I think
I
you're
think
right,
you are
Jack,
right. I didn't
actually,
notice.
yeah.
Well, I think if it was just that top bee, I think I'd like it a bit more. But I think. But I like the colours
Disagree.
and I like how close it is. You can see all the fine details of the bee. Where are the bee's eyes?
Yeah.
That's an eye. Damn.
That's its eye. Zoom in and show him all of the eyes.
All of the eyes? What do you mean? Oh god. Oh wow.
All of the eyes. Yeah.
And then these are on
Compound
top
eyes.
as well.
That's
Those are. I don't know if they're eyes per se, but they're definitely sensors.
so yeah, like
of some
I
description.
like the detail and how
They are, those ones on the top are light sensors. It's basically they can detect the difference between light and shadow, so if there's a bird flying over, it knows. But also, it depends. Some bees and some creatures with compound eyes have little brushes on their hands, so they can brush their eyes
nice.
clean. Which I think's both very cute and quite horrifying, the idea of brushing an eye.
All right, there we go.
I also love the bee movie, so it's
Here we go. On to the next one. Gurkha warrior in India. Right. Right. Well, it's just flat, isn't it?
yeah. It's also
It's
The subject
wonky.
yeah. I
is
was
quite
just about to say it's
interesting, but-
wonky. Like
Look, he's struggling with the balance over in the right
he's
here.
about to fall over.
This dude in the middle is already
Looks like it,
fallen
yeah.
over.
It's just very distracting. There's it's out of focus.
Yeah,
No,
it's just bad
not
quality.
out of focus, but the depth. It's too deep depth of field because I'm looking at these shoes
Yeah.
over here. You've got the building in the background, which is a massive distraction.
I think. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, very ugly building. You're not seeing the face. There's no connection with the subject.
And also the shape of
Yeah.
the subject is just
Yeah.
weird.
You can't see the other leg.
It's... Well, you can see the foot, but
Yeah.
not... You know,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
bizarre.
there's his other leg.
There's his
and
foot. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where in the moment the photographer has been more fascinated with what the subject is doing rather
Yeah.
than how it looks. Like, as we've been pointing out, it's not level, there's crap in the background, there's, somebody that's half cut off in the right-hand corner. They're not looking at the edge of the photo or anything else, they're just looking at the individual doing the interesting
But you know
thing.
what's interesting?
And that's all well and good, but it doesn't make a good
I
photo.
don't think it would take too much to make this from a poor photo to an average photo.
Yeah. I think
Straight-
you're right.
Straighten it, crop it,
Crop
pop
it
the
in the
shadows a little bit, just balance the exposure.
Turn
it black and white.
so the flatness can work.
Bob's your uncle. Spot heel out the
Yeah.
shoes.
Fixed your photo.
Yeah.
That could be
That
another
could be
segment.
another segment. All right, there we are. Gurkha warrior, Gatka warrior. Give it.
Bit weird, but nice try.
Sorry, king
And there's
of
2
hyphen
comments on that.
potatoes. Oh god.
Oh dear.
Oh, look at that. Oh.
I can't tell what.
Well, First of all,
looks
the
like my
resolution
canal near
is
where I live.
1080 by 3003. Oh, 300, 1080 by 303.
Oh dear.
Okay, that's something. The vignette is
Ugh,
my brightness
I have no idea.
off?
I can't tell.
No, it's not my brightness. My screen's brightness is turned
Yeah,
up all
mine's
the way.
is as well. That is a vignette.
It's a very, very dark photo. I don't know what's going on in the middle.
Can't see anything.
I can't even zoom in because it's such low resolution.
Just doesn't allow you.
Yeah,
Sunsets.
an example of a bad sunset, I think.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
I don't like. It's one of those things where not only is the subject bad, boring, and cliched, but also the fact that it's panorama means the actual picture itself is impossible.
It doesn't even.
Looking
It
at it
doesn't.
on a screen, you get 50% of the display area of the photo. Printing it out is always a bastard to do. It's just one of those annoying. If this was an object, it would be a splinter.
Okay. And do you know what? I'd have to agree. I don't think there's any way you can fix
we
that.
couldn't salvage that.
I think
Could not salvage that.
unless you were doing a
It's
project
beyond it.
on cliche, bad quality panoramas. This
At least the
yes,
horizon.
at least it's a straight. It's a straight
That's
photo.
something. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
All right, there we are. So
The
Thomas B. Garrard.
One call on
Sorry, pal, but oh, it's taken in
Sorry,
Copenhagen
Thomas.
as well. One of the most beautiful parts of
oh
the world.
god.
nice try, but it's
It's a splinter.
no cigar for
Okay.
that one.
This one is called Childhood.
Oh god.
Did my mum take this? I think it's been taken by.
This is an example of black and white not used
No.
well. It's very overexposed.
Bit beyond high
Bit
key.
beyond high
that,
key.
innit?
The mud is definitely adding something.
Do you think that's mud, or do you think it's a broken slab of concrete?
No, that's definitely
Yeah, that's
on the
like-
right. It's definitely mud,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
on the left it's concrete.
Yeah, sorry, because when you zoomed in, I was thinking, hang on, that's not the muddy bit.
I don't.
Is there anything
Why-
to say on this?
My thing is the title Childhood, and it's like, you know, when I don't know, you're a wee child, you draw around your hand, and your parent puts it on the fridge. Then years and years later, it's in a frame, and you know you're now in your 20s, and your parents are like, look at that.
My
all of
parents
that.
are not that
You
sensitive.
know, kind of keeping, but the ones that generally do this type of thing are, and they generally have the foresight to keep the child's impression inside the house, whereas these have been a sentimental memory that's been neglected. Oh, child, outside, you know, let your happy moment of shoving your hands into wet concrete be forever deteriorated by the ravages of nature. It doesn't send out a very nostalgic,
I think
pleasant
you've just
message.
you've gone far too deep there, Louis. I think this is just a Karen just wanting.
Yeah,
A bit of-
I would agree with that. I have no problem with making your mark in concrete. Like I did that in my old house. Like there's a concrete handprint of me and my sister. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think the issue is the capturing of that image is something that's so mundane, and also it's just not something that's done in a particularly good way. I think that there would be a lot of ways of making this significantly a more interesting photo if one could go back and rephotograph it. Again, taking aside the narrative and the behind of the photo, looking at it purely visually, it's boring to look at. It's dull.
Yeah.
But then going back and rephotographing it, you could photograph it in a much more interesting way.
Yeah, I think.
I just wouldn't. Sorry.
Would
Sorry,
you
Karen.
allow your children to create handprints like that in the first place? Or...
That's a tricky one. Probably, yeah, but I wouldn't, like, not in concrete outside. Like, imagine if that was on your driveway.
Every time you drove off the driveway, you just
looking
get
at
a
that
bump.
for 20 years. Badoink, run over my child again. No, I would do a little thing like plaster of Paris for the child and keep it inside. And not that I particularly care, but the child probably would like to do it. But yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. It's the human equivalent of cat paws across the pavement. It's a bit like,
Jack, can I just point out?
Yeah, I know. I've
That you wouldn't be able to post on this.
Yeah, I
subreddit.
know.
Absolutely no photos taken on or appearing to have been taken on railway tracks.
That's
That's
that
a
is
weird
a.
rule
I don't
as
think
well.
it is. I reckon it's a safety thing.
Yeah,
hell no.
Oh God. Oh, mad. Okay. Well, that's really ironic because that was what my last project was about. So.
There we are. All right, moving on to a cat. It was only a matter of time, wasn't it, lads? All right, this is called One-Eyed Feline. This is from Sliced Bananas.
Nice.
It's composed very well. I am actually not a massive fan of the gradient in the background. From the blue to the orange. I do like the composition of it. The cat's looking straight at the camera with the one eye that it does have. It's a vaguely interesting subject. It's not just any old cat because he has only got the one eye. It's just a bit overprocessed, isn't it? It's just a bit too overcooked.
Do you reckon?
A little bit oversaturated.
It looks like it's been done in a smartphone version.
Yeah,
of
you can
Photoshop.
tell from the resolution as well that it's just very grainy. It will tell us, I think, in the no, it doesn't tell us what it is, but
what gets me about the gradient in the background is that on the left hand side you've got the kind of the bluey black, then on the right you've got the orange. Its eyes are the opposite. The right hand eye is dark and the left hand eye is orange. So I think that gradient has been deliberately placed halfway down the cat's face to draw some link between it and the background to make the picture a whole rather than
just a picture.
its
I think it's
parts.
either
So I think that's a deliberate
or it's a
choice,
very happy
but
accident.
It's not something that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
For me.
The comment is taking
cat.
picture of my family playing ping pong when our cat jumped on the fence and looked into the camera. Really liked the way he looked, so gave him some more love and
Gave him too much love in Lightroom.
Yeah, a little bit too much love in Lightroom.
Dollops of love.
There you are. Well, that's the cat, Jack. Thoughts on the Kit
It's a cat.
It's a cat. Yeah. Can't disagree with you there, pal.
It's a reasonably nice picture.
Yeah.
I
Probably would have been better without lighting
yeah, I
in
think
there.
so. Convert to black and white, you love. Oh, here we are. Something that Louis would like. This is called Fire and Water by One Photo a Day. Good. And it's of some fireworks.
Convert that to black and white, it'll be much better.
There's a lot of distraction going on there. Hey, oh, what's going on here? That's kind of some weird...
That's what I was going to say.
That's lens flare, hey.
I think, because as Ben said, I'm good at fireworks. There's a couple of tricks that this person might not know about, and actually our audience might like to know too. So firework photos, a lot of people think, well, a firework looks like a firework, there's not much that you can do, you just have to have the camera open for a long exposure. And that's nonsense. There's plenty that you can do to make your firework photos stand out. What I like to do is start my firework photo exposure with the camera completely out of focus. And then as the firework spreads and blooms, manually focus in, matching the speed of that spread. So when the firework reaches its full size, you've got a really small pinprick of light at each kind of little arm of light that's extending, and you end up with fireworks that look puffy and colourful, and then the firework that explodes after that will be pin sharp, and you can playing with focus, because fireworks are launched at different times. You can have one that's in focus, one that's not, and it adds a level of depth and texture to the picture that you don't get with something like this that's just in focus, one standard shot. It looks like they kicked the tripod. If they weren't using a tripod, that would be impressively still. But there's other things that you can do to make your firework photos interesting. That's, this is quite a standard one. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna mention the right hand side, or the lower right. I've just seen the description, Ben, but I've just noticed the right hand side. I was there like, what the hell is that?
It's the water, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a waterfall, isn't it?
Oh,
Did you?
Yeah, it is. It's Niagara.
Yeah, which I think. I think it makes the picture a lot. Well, it distracts me, that waterfall. Even though it is a very beautiful waterfall, it just distracts me from the fireworks.
The waterfall is beautiful, but that's not a beautiful picture of the waterfall. I think with more technical competency, the waterfall could be used as a beautiful element. But
it does just look like a bit of a blur.
I agree with you, Jack. Because I initially thought that was just the reflections on a flat body of water of the city lights, or of that white firework that's in the middle, that overexposed one. So, yeah, I'd agree with you, Jack. If it was shot differently, it could potentially make the picture, but with this, it just distracts it.
On that terrible discipline. I think we'll call it a day there. Remember to use the hashtag Mediocre Conversation to join in on our photo conversations of the word, which is gutter.
What a lovely word.
An amazing word. Thank you, Louis, for joining us today. Where can people find you if they want to check you out, Louis?
I have a Facebook that's not been updated and I can't remember, and I also have a website as well. Sorry, that's my little alarm. I don't have an Instagram. My website will come up if you type in Louis Barr, Architecture Photographer Exeter into Google. It will be the first one to come up. Have a look on there.
All right, send me the URL.
Yeah,
I'll put it in the show notes.
And I'll make myself an Instagram for future episodes. Yeah.
All right, Jack.
Find me at Jack Henderson Photo. And you, Ben?
Follow me at Ben Bullman
Follow
Photo.
the show.
Follow the podcast.
The Mediocre Photo. Thank
you.
you.
Tag teaming there. If you liked it, subscribe. If you really liked it, like it.
See you next time.
Toodle pip.